Friday in Stockholm, end of September 2013, the IPCC science report came out. It offered no solace and no surprises. It was the usual sort of science that we've had for a long time from the IPCC. The scientific message for policymakers, business leaders, civil society, for all of us, hasn't changed in a quarter of a century. The first report came out in 1990, and nothing significant from doing something about reducing our emissions side of things has come out of the new reports. We knew everything we needed to know in 1990 about reducing our emissions. There's lots about adaptation and impacts that comes later, but we knew everything we needed to know about reducing emissions in 1990. What came out in the report are small adjustments and refinements, because despite what the skeptics might try and tell us, this is a mature science. It relies on tried and tested physics that's worked for decades, if not centuries. So nothing particularly surprising out of the report. But what has changed since the last IPCC report in 2007? Well, we've successfully dumped another 200 billion tons of CO2 in the atmosphere. So quite knowingly, we've merrily chucked up 200 gigatons, 200 billion tons of CO2 since the last report in 2007. Our emissions today are 60% over that, maybe nearer 65% higher in carbon dioxide than they were in the time when we first showed a concern in 1990 at the time of the first report. 60% higher. So we claimed to be concerned about it then, and now we're 60% higher in terms of emissions. And as probably you're all aware, that CO2 concentrations now in the atmosphere are higher than they have been for 800,000 years, which I think is heading towards 3 times longer than humans have been on the planet. So the sort of litany of our failures are quite disturbing, I think. Despite that, we repeatedly sign up to making our fair contribution. This is taken from the Copenhagen Accord, to hold the increase in global temperature. Notice that below 2 degrees C. It doesn't say a 30% chance of, or a 60% chance, or a 50-50 chance. It says below, which means a high probability of not going above 2 degrees, and take action to meet this objective consistent with science. That's fairly radical for policymakers, and even more radical for policymakers on the basis of equity. Now, we have signed up to this repeatedly at virtually every international negotiation where lots of carbon is emitted as we fly to them, whether it's in Copenhagen, Cancun, Doha, Durban, all of these events. So we continually sign up to this. So we should hold our paymasters, indeed we should hold ourselves to account to what, as democracies, we have signed up to. So 2 degrees C, which I say is going to be the focus of this talk, my hypothesis is that the only way that we can avoid dangerous climate change that is already going to kill many people anyway, and we have to accept that, and we should not forget that, is that we need deep and immediate reductions in energy demand. Now, I'm saying this as an engineer who spent a lot of time working on oil platforms, producing oil, and other bits of engineering kit, that I don't think we can solve this problem with engineering. Engineering is a prerequisite for solving it. It is really important, but it is not enough. We need deep and immediate reductions in energy demand, and that is very unpopular, because that means people like us. And the argument that normally we get is, well, surely we can do it with technology, with low carbon energy supply, with wind, solar, geothermal, nuclear, all these things that are very low carbon. Surely we can do it with those. But the problem is, climate change is a cumulative problem. We have carbon budgets. It's not about the sorts of targets that certainly in the UK were a major focus, and quite a lot of international negotiations, about what we are going to do by 2050. 2050 is an irrelevant date in terms of climate change. Any scientist who has ever referred to doing something by 2050 should put money into a scientific research box for other people to do proper research from. 2050 has nothing to do with climate change. The only thing that matters in terms of the temperatures are the cumulative emissions that occur over the century, the carbon budgets. And the reason we like this is it means we can rely on the technologists to solve the problem in 2030, 2040, and 2050. The reason we don't like this, even though it's got more science behind it, it means we have to do something about it today, and yesterday preferably. So the science fundamentally changes the politics and the philosophy, the culture of climate change.